Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, as we know that in the previous lecture, we had started our discussion over the voting behavior, and basically we had discussed that what is the democracy, what is the fact, you can say the types of democracy like the direct or indirect democracy. All right, why the understanding of voting behavior is important if you really want to understand that what is the implication of democracy. After this, there were so many facts and figures that we have you can say discuss. But before this, let us see the topics that we have scheduled for the discussion under this particular series of voting behavior. Okay. So basically there is the first topic, that is the history of democracy in voting. Thereafter the importance of voting. Thereafter historic vote, legal framework, election machinery, political landscape and party participation, election outcome, voting and approach, explanation, meaning of voting behavior, significance of voting behavior, determinants of voting behavior, role of media in elections and voting behavior. Okay, so you can say that these are the topics that we have scheduled for the discussion. Out of this, basically that is the topic on which we have started the discussion in the previous lecture, that is the history of democracy in voting, and the topics that we are left with are the voting importance, historical vote, legal framework, election machinery, political landscape and the party participation, the election outcome, voting and approach, explanation part, meaning of voting behavior, significance of voting behavior, determinants of voting behavior, role of media in elections and voting behavior. Okay, so this is the clear, you can say the picture that we have created. All right, so basically in the previous lecture, like we had discussed over the earlier voting incident in the ancient Greeks. Like we have discussed, how does the Greeks maintain their influence in today's democracy system, and you can say how did they introduce the voting scenario for the first time in the year of 1508 BC. Sorry, 508 BC, not 15. Okay, and that particular thing that they had discussed known as the earliest forms of democracy. Okay, and basically they had discussed the concept of negative elections. All right, where we had discussed that however they had the system of elections, but when it is the topic of the voting, so basically they did not have the universal adult franchise, which I have told you, if there is any person who is above of certain age as per the mandate of the country, then the person could vote. Okay, irrespective of all the basis of discrimination. So basically in the ancient Greece, the system of election was there, but not the universal franchise. Only the male landowners were, you can say, empowered to cast their votes. Okay, and in the negative elections, that they are required to eliminate the candidate whom they think is not feasible to be the part of the political council. And for how many years the exilation was there? Up to 10 years. Okay, and thereafter we had discussed that basically the voters inscribes their choice on the broken pieces of poetry that we call as an ostraca or ostracize. Okay, and there was a certain limit of votes that should be pooled for one candidate. Thereafter only the voting count will be start. Okay, and we know if any candidate did not receive 6,000 votes, then the voting count would not be started and all the candidates would be remain as it is. All right, but we had discussed the situation due to the limited number of voters. Why? Because only the male landowners were allowed to vote. Typically only the highly unpopular leaders were ostracized and not most of the leaders were ostracized. Okay, so that are the things that we had discussed in the previous lecture. I hope that you have revised the facts and figures of the previous lectures in the well enough manner before you have come for this lecture. Because when we will go further, when we will continue this, so there are so many things that you are required to connect with the things, connect with the facts that we had already discussed. It is not necessary that I will be the one who will take you to the connection. Okay, you are required to apply your own mind. I will just only help you, not take your responsibility as a whole. To be very honest, I'm telling you. Thereafter, after the early incidents, now this is the medieval time, or you can say there is the medieval Venice. Okay, Venice is the city of Italy. Okay, today it is lies in the European region. So basically, when we talk about the Venice, so that was the time period of 13th century. 13th century was there when the Venetian state solidified the governance by electing a great council of 40 members. Okay, so basically right now we know, even in today's term, if we talk about India, then we know there is a council of ministers. Okay, like we had discussed in the parliament lecture, only one person is not so capable to govern the country. Okay, because there are so many things, there are so many ministries, departments and all, which having their specific work, which having their exclusive work, and the one person is not seen fit to manage them all. Okay, by various means, like by the individualistic basis and even by the knowledge or the practical experience basis, because it is not possible that the one person is capable of both. Okay, he could physically manage all the departments and all, he could knowledge based matters, he could manage all the things. No, this is not possible. Okay, so here is the council of ministers required. So similar thing was introduced in the 13th century of Venice. Okay, and you can say Venice of 13th century basically. Okay, so in the Venice of 13th century, the Venetian states basically solidified the governance by providing the great council of 40 members who were to be handled different portfolios allotted to them. But these 40 members would be elected members, they were not be appointed or not be nominated. Okay, like if we talk about today's council of ministers, so we know these are those people who got elected to the Lok Sabha by the general people of the India. Okay, similar system was there in the great council of 40 members, that these 40 members were to be elected through the elections. Okay, and the Venice used the approval voting system. Approval voting system, okay, for the election, where electors cast a vote for every candidate they found acceptable and none for those they did not. Okay, so basically if we talk about today's you can say the voting system today in India, so in India we have the two types of voting system. That is, what are those two types? Now it's a question to you. Okay, and you have 30 seconds to think an answer, then I will give you the answer. Time starts now. Just think about it. We had already discussed in the previous lectures. All right, and if you have revised the lecture, you will be able to answer it. 10 seconds have been passed off, last 20 are remaining. Come on, give the answer. Last 10 seconds. Okay, the time's up. So basically in India, we have the two type of system. The first past the post system. So the first is first past the post system. Okay, what is this? So basically during this type of voting, the candidate who will score majority of the votes, he will be elected. Okay, suppose there is A, B, C, D, the 5 candidates were conquesting for the elections and the A received the maximum votes, then he will be elected. Okay, second one was the proportional representation. In the proportional representation, the candidates are elected not on the basis of the majority of the vote, but on the basis of share of the population. Like which you can say which state or which particular region they are representing, what is the share of that person reason or the people in the general population. Okay, we have the two system. First past the post system, basically workable during the elections of the Lok Sabha. Proportional representation is workable for the elections of the Rajya Sabha. Okay, now let's come to the approval voting. So approval voting is that basically in the approval voting, it is quite different from the first past the post system. Why? Because in approval voting, instead of selecting the one candidate, you could give your preference to many candidates. But when we talk about the first past the post system, so basically you could only vote for one candidate. All right. So basically, if we take the example, okay, then we can say if we take the example of first past the post system, so there are you can say A, B, C, D, E. 5 candidates are electing the election. Okay. Here you could only give the vote to one candidate. So you like both A and D. You think that A and D are the perfect candidates, but there is a restriction that you could not vote for both of them. You have to choose one amongst them or one between them basically. Okay. So now you are required to, you can say, put your mind in a way that one is to be the best. So suppose you granted your vote for A, then you could not vote for D, even if you like him and even if you think that D is the perfect candidate. But once you have given your vote to A, you could not vote for D. So one voter, one vote, one candidate. This is the system of first past the post system. But when we take the case of approval voting, then it is quite different. How? Just take example. Suppose there are A, B, C, D, E. There are how many candidates? 5 candidates are voting. Okay. Again, you are the voter. And then you find that A and D, they both are the right candidates for the position. So here you are not bounded to vote for only one candidate, but you could give your voting, you could give your preference for more than one candidate. So you could vote for A as well as for D. All right. So similarly, all the voters will do the same. Okay. They could vote as much as candidates they seems fit for the position. Thereafter, once the votes will be pulled, then the vote counting will begin and the candidate who secures the maximum votes will be the winner. All right. Suppose you voted for A and D both, but more people gave preference to A, then A would be elected. But you had the right to vote for both. So approval voting is the voting where electors having the right that they could cast the vote for every candidate, and this is not applicable in the first past the post system. Why? Because in the first past the post system you could only vote for one candidate. Okay. And who should be the winner? The winner was the candidate who received the most approval from the voters. Okay. The candidate who will receive most of the votes will automatically declared as a voter. All right. So that was a system that happened in the medieval Venice, and that was the voting system that I have explained you. Okay. Please make sure that you will revise these things on the timely basis. All right. Because if you will keep them for the last time, then you won't be able to recall all the things that we have just discussed, because your mind memory will not as fresh as it now. Okay. Now let's move forward. Now here comes the voting rights in America. Okay. So we had take the example of Greece in the previous lecture. We have taken the example of Venice in this lecture. Now we are discussing upon the voting rights in America. Okay. So now we are discussing about the voting rights in America. So basically, if we talk about the American history, all right, American history has seen a continuous expansion of voting rights. No. Here I will tell you a story. Okay. The story is maybe relevant with the exam, but it is not specifically relevant with the exam. Why? Because the story that I'm going to telling you is important from the examination point of view for those exams only in which the world history asked. All right. But the exams in which world history not asked, the story having no relevance to it. But here, why I'm telling you? Because I want you all to get the clear cut idea, to get the clear cut understanding of the things in a proper manner. All right. So basically, if we talk about America, all right. So America was not as like it today. All right. American continent had not been discovered for many years by the Europeans and all. And you can say basically there was a time in the history when Asia and Asian and Europeans, basically they did not have any idea about the American continent. Like we used to think the Atlantic Ocean is the end. Okay, like if you look at the world map, you will find between American continent and the Africa, Europe, and the, you can say, the Asian side, eastern side, basically there is the Atlantic Ocean. All right, and Atlantic Ocean is the way through which you could go to the America. So basically there used, you can say there was a time when the Indians, Africans and Europeans, they used to thought that there is no land by crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, then what happened? During the 14th and the 15th century, many European voyagers, they were exploring the new areas of the world. Okay, and basically even you can say there were two main kingdoms like the Portuguese, like the Spain. These kingdoms were funding these voyagers. Okay, the rulers of these kingdoms were making the deals. Like if you are a voyager, all right, they would provide you the ship. You are required to get the man on the ship, like you are required to make your own team, and then they would provide you the ship, the fuel, the food. You need to take the ship for the voyages in the ocean, all right, and found a new land that has not been discovered so far, that has not been under the rule of any other kingdom. And once you would found that particular land, then you will inform the ruler that, sir, I have found this land. Then what will happen? The ruler will proclaim the land and will make the land as the part of his kingdom. But what you will get in return? You would be appointed as the governor or the viceroy of this newly founded land. Okay, so that was the great deal for many youngsters, and you can say for many adventurers. Like they were required to explore the seas, found the land, submit the land to the ruler who had provided them the ship, food and all, and the person who had found the land, the voyager, would be become the governor or the viceroy of this newly founded land. Okay, so similarly many Europeans were started the journey, but as I have told you that they were not so much aware about the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, they used to thought that there is no land beyond this Atlantic Ocean. But many, you can say, voyagers attempted to cross the Atlantic Ocean. All right, and basically the one voyager of them was the person whose name was like he was also on the dollars, and his name was Christopher Columbus. Okay, Christopher Columbus was the European person who finally founded a land. Okay, and he reached the New Guinea, that is nowadays in the West Indies, but these islands are close to the mainland of America, and he founded it. Okay, then what happened? The same thing that happened in India, all right, the same happened with the America. Like the ancient American civilizations, like the Aztecas, Incas and Mayan cultures, they got captivated by the European powers like the Spain, like the Portuguese, French and British. Okay, and for a long duration, the northern part of the America were under the control of the Britishers. Okay, and this northern part today we call it as a Canada or America. All right, so basically in 1604, for the first time, the British colony was established in the America, and basically in 1776, finally, the Americans got liberated. All right. So remember, the America is the world's first democracy. So during this period of time from 1604 to 1776, various Americans were realizing that what should be the idea of democracy, and it is the you can say same thing when the French was developing the idea of freedom, liberty and all. Okay, and you can say the French Revolution had also paved a way during this way. All right. So it was the 1776 when the America got liberated from the British, and the declaration that all men are created equal applied only to a selected few. Okay. It means that, however, the America had paved the way for the voting right in the democracy, but still the democracy was not so open for all. Okay. Like we can say during the tenure of invasion by the European powers on the mainland of America, all right, various white people got settled down there. Okay. And some of them would become the part of America. All right. So initially in the 1776 when the USA got liberated, all right. So basically only the white population, only the white men who were above the age of 21, they were allowed to vote. Okay. So still you can say there was a discrimination and there was no universal adult franchisee in the kingdom. All right. Only the white men had the rights to vote, and they used to be above the 21 age. Like very much similar to the Greek pattern. Greek, only the male landowners were allowed. Okay. However, over the period of time, it has been remains the American strength that basically they grow, they change, they adapt, and progressively they extending voting rights to a broader population. It means that even the black people got the voting rights. And if we talk about today's America, then remember, in today's America, there is not only the American citizens who are living in. There are citizens who belong to many other countries, but they got settled down in USA. Even those people had the voting rights. All right. So that's how the voting rights in America became. Okay. And basically these two, or you can say these three areas, like the Greek, like the Venice, and like the America, these were the first, you can say the pioneers of the democracy and the voting in the world. All right. After completing the history of democracy and voting, now we are going to see with the importance of voting, like what is the importance of voting in the today's world. Okay. So basically the Abraham Lincoln, who was the okay, now it is again the second question that I'm going to ask you. Abraham Lincoln is famous, and he was whom? You have 30 seconds to think and answer, and your time starts now. He used to be the very famous personality of his time. Still, he is a very famous personality. So you should be aware about his name. Okay. You have 30 seconds to think and answer. Then I will give you the answer. Just think about it. Time's up. So Abraham Lincoln was used to be the US president. Okay. And his work is, you can say, a very praisable work. All right. He did a lot of things which is inspirational for both of the leaders even today. All right. So students, basically, I don't think that right now in this lecture we have a sufficient time so that we could discuss on it. So basically, we will start the discussion over it in the next lecture. Till then, you are required to revise the facts and figures that all we have discussed in this lecture and be ready for the another lecture. With this note, let's end this lecture, and what we say thank you.